Welcome fourth grade scientists. Today I collected images of different animals, including these two images. Do you know, although they look different, they represent the same animal. I think that you are excited to know how these two images belong to the same animal. Be ready with your science book and pen. Let's learn more about these animals in our second lesson of the concept Adaptation and Survival. In our Learn lessons, we will learn and discover more about the concept of adaptation and survival to be able to answer the main question at the end of the concept, which is, how do different types of animals and plants adapt to survive in extreme environments? We learned in our last lesson, although animals live in different environments, including the cold polar region with very low temperatures and hot dry areas with high temperature, they have a common basic and important characteristic. Can you guess what this characteristic is? Exactly! All animals have the ability to survive in their environments. Do you remember the penguin's blood vessels, which helped it to survive in the cold environment, and the polar bear, which has a white fur that helped it to camouflage in the snow as they sneak up on their prey? Also, the agamal lizard that looks for shadow to protect itself from very high temperature. All these different adaptations help the animals survive. But are these adaptations part of the animal's body structure, which means a physical feature, or does the animal sometimes behave in a specific way in different situations to be able to survive? To answer this question, we will learn more in this activity, Analyze Like a Scientist. In this activity, we will learn two main types of adaptation: structural adaptation and behavioral adaptation. Before we start the activity, let's explain the difference between them. When the adaptation relates to part of the animal's body structure, it means physical characteristic. We call it structural adaptation, like the shape of the penguin's feet, like the color of the polar bear's fur, like the ear of the Fennec Fox, or even the long neck of giraffe. If adaptation relates to a behavior of animals in different situations, such as defending themselves, looking for food, or any behavior they do for survival, we call it behavioral adaptation. Let's remember together what we studied in our last lesson: the lizard that behaves in a certain way to protect itself from sun's heat. Exactly, the agamal lizard. Some animals and birds migrate at certain times of the year. They leave their homes and travel far distances to another places. Migrate? Which type of adaptation is that? Structural adaptation or behavioral adaptation? Let's analyze very quickly. Did I refer to anything related to its body structure? No. So, it's not structural adaptation. Migration from one place to another is the behavior of animals in certain seasons to look for water and food when they cannot find them in their environment, or for the purpose of mating. As long as this change relates to their behavior, then we call it behavioral adaptation. Let's discover more about the two types of adaptation and watch a video to collect evidence of the structural and behavioral adaptation of two types of foxes, the Arctic fox and the Fennec fox. But now, be ready with your notebooks and pen to write down the notes as we watch the video. Let's watch it.
All over the world, animals are well adapted to the places where they live. What would it be like to live somewhere very cold? Well, you'd have to wrap up, but it could be fun. The animals that live in the Arctic, the northernmost part of the Earth, are adapted to the cold and extreme conditions. Like this Arctic fox, who can survive where temperatures fall as low as minus 50 degrees centigrade. Look at the fox's white coat. It's perfect winter camouflage. Thick fur on its paws allows it to walk on both snow and ice. Can you see who's hiding here? The fox blends in perfectly, which helps it hunt for birds and small mammals. It also helps it avoid being seen by the region's top predator, the polar bear. When food is scarce, an Arctic fox will follow a polar bear on a hunting trip and feed on the bear's leftover scraps. The Arctic fox is a fast runner when it needs to be. That's useful for escaping predators like bears and wolves, and for chasing its prey, the rodents and birds it needs for food. What a lovely thick fur coat. It's the best insulation of any mammal in the world. But its fur isn't always white. When the seasons change, its coat changes too. It turns brown or gray to blend in with the rocks and plants which appear when snow melts. The perfect camouflage for spring hunting. What are these three little foxes up to? They are Arctic fox pups. Play fighting helps develop their physical strength. It's useful to practice hunting skills before facing the harsh winter weather. Who lives here a long way from the snow and ice? Another type of fox who's adapted to very different conditions. The desert in North Africa and on the Sinai and Arabian peninsulas is home to the world's smallest fox. The Fennec Fox, with its large ears, is well camouflaged against the sand. So why the huge ears? This little fox has excellent hearing, and its ears are also very good at helping it stay cool. The Fennec Fox is nocturnal, so it can avoid the extreme heat of the day. But nights are cold in the desert. And Fennec Foxes have long, thick hair that keeps them snug when the sun goes down. What adaptation do the Arctic fox and the Fennec fox have in common?
After watching the video, can you analyze the difference between these two images? I'll help you with a clue. Although the two images look very different, and one may think they are two different animals, reality is both images are for the Arctic fox. What? Yes, same animal. The color of the fox fur changes. In winter, the fur is white, while during the spring, it changes to the brown color. So back to our question, is it structural or behavioral adaptation? As long as this change happens in the body, then 100% it's structural adaptation. But that takes us to another question. Why does its fur color change? We studied this in the last lesson. Think about it for 5 seconds. Exactly! The camouflage, which means the color of the fur changes to blend in white snow, so they hide from a predator, or can also surprise its prey and hunt them. What about the Fennec Fox? How does the Fennec Fox adapt to survive in the desert? The Fennec Fox adapted in the desert with its big ears. Why isn't the Fennec Fox ears as big as the Arctic fox? The more the ears were big, the more it would be exposed to a larger amount of air, helping its body to stay cool. Why do you think the fur color of the Fennec Fox is not white like the Arctic fox? The Fennec Fox lives in the desert. The color of the sand and rocks in the desert tends to be golden. Its fur must be golden, and this helps it to hide, or doing camouflage. What we have done together now is that we used the analysis skill. I mean, we divided the information into smaller parts to be understandable and posed the questions that we always wonder, like, why does this happen? What are the reasons behind it? Now we have a paragraph to read on page 10. And as you read, I want you to capture and collect evidences of structural and behavioral adaptation. Underline evidence of structural adaptation and circle the evidence of behavioral adaptation. Let's open our books on page 10. I'm going to read with you the first part. Fennec foxes and Arctic foxes both live in harsh climates. Fennec foxes have a tan-colored coat that provides camouflage in a sandy, rocky environment and protects them from the scorching hot sun. Let's stop here for a second and think, is it a structural or behavioral adaptation? The color of the fur is a structural adaptation, so we should underline it. Let's continue. Fennec foxes, like dogs, also cool themselves by panting, taking up to 700 breaths per minute. The panting means that the animal breathing quickly with its tongue out. Why do the Fennec foxes behave in such a way? And what does this behavior have to do with its adaptation? When the Fennec foxes behave in such a way, they get the heat out from their nose and mouth. And this helps them lose the heat in their body so they can stay cool. Though, do we call it structural or behavioral adaptation? They behave in that way when they feel hot. So, we should draw a circle around the word panting. I think you are ready to continue reading by yourselves and collect more evidence about structural and behavioral adaptations for these two types of foxes. Now we are going to talk about another animal that lives in a different environment. What might this animal be? Let's watch together. Be ready with your pen, write down notes, and collect evidence. Let's play our video.
Would you like to see a shark? At safe distance, or maybe on a screen is best. There are over 400 species of shark in the world. Most can live only in salt water because they must keep salt inside their bodies to survive. Bull sharks are an exception. They've developed special adaptations that mean they're able to swim in fresh water like rivers. Their organs are able to pump all the excess water out of their bodies to help maintain a salt and water balance. That means that as well as swimming in the sea, they can also spend time in coastal estuaries and tropical rivers and lakes, sometimes taking the animals that live there by surprise. Bull sharks can be found in Africa, Asia, and Australia, and also in North, South, and Central America. Why do you think they're called bull sharks? It's probably because of their short, blunt snout, and like bulls, they often headbutt their prey before attacking. Look at those teeth. They're razor sharp and serrated and can cut through almost anything. They often tear off a chunk of their prey and swim away with it. Bull sharks are known to wander alone, but sometimes hunt in groups, and particularly like swimming in shallow water along the coast. Because they can migrate up rivers and like places where people often swim, some consider them to be the most dangerous sharks to humans. but shark attacks are extremely rare.
As we all watched and observed, bull sharks are very special because they can survive in both salt water and fresh water. What? A shark in fresh water? Like rivers? Yes, very true. Let's discuss how their presence in fresh water is an advantage for them. But bull sharks are the only species which survives in fresh waters. And since no other sharks can swim in fresh waters, bull sharks have less competition for finding food. What other evidence have we collected from video? Bull shark is one of the distinctive animals in camouflage strategy. Let me explain how. Bull sharks have dark back and a wide belly. How does this characteristic help the shark? Let's analyze the environment that the shark lives in. Ocean's floor is very deep and sunlight doesn't reach to the bottom. So for fish or animals swimming at the surface and looking down, they might not see the bull shark because its dark colored back camouflage with the ocean's dark bottom. While to all animals swimming underneath the shark, if they look up towards the surface of the water, the white belly of the bull shark will blend in with the bright light of the sun. So the living organisms may think that the white color is the light of the sun. Oof! This shark can easily hunt in its environment and surprise its prey thanks to the counter shading, which means its body's colors that help the shark to survive. Now you can complete the text on page 11 about bull sharks. And do not forget to underline the structural adaptations and circle the behavioral adaptations. After reading, we now have collected different evidences and reached a lot of information about the structural and behavioral adaptations. What do you think is our next step that scientists take? Scientists classify and organizing the information to help them understand the similarities and differences or discover the patterns among information. So, I prepared a table that will help us organize the information we collected, which is the same table on page 11. And we need to record our evidence of structural and behavioral adaptations for each animal here. For example, we will classify the evidence we have gathered on the adaptations of the Fennec Fox. So here we write structural adaptations such as fur color, and on the other hand, behavioral adaptations such as panting. Now, take your time in answering. After you finish, we are going to review your answers together. I prepared the table for you so we can play the game together. The first card is live in burrows. Live in burrows goes for Fennec Fox, Arctic Fox, or bull shark. I think it can go for both foxes. I'll put it in the Arctic Fox. Is it structural or behavioral adaptation? Which one? I think it's structural. Is it related to body parts? No, it's related to a behavior that this animal do. So, it's a behavioral adaptation. Let's take this card, thick fur. Both kinds of foxes have thick fur for different reasons. Thick fur is a kind of structural or behavioral adaptation. Is it related to body part? Yes, fur is a body part, so it's structural adaptation. What about this card? Short ears and legs. Who has short ears and legs? Fennec Fox, Arctic Fox, or bull shark? I think it's the Arctic Fox. Short ears and legs is a kind of structural or behavioral adaptation. I think it's which one? I think it's structural adaptation because ears and legs are parts of the body or the body structure of this animal. What about hide in sand? Who hide in sand? Who lives in sand? It is the Fennec Fox. So this card must go for Fennec Fox. Hiding, the behavior of hiding when I feel hot or looking for shade like lizards, it's a kind of structural or behavioral adaptation. Yes, it's behavioral adaptation. What about the extra large ears? Who has extra large ears? Yes, you are right. It's the Fennec Fox. The Fennec Fox extra large ear is a structural or behavioral adaptation. I hear someone answering that it's structural adaptation, and you are right. It's structural adaptation because it's related to a body part. What about the ability to live in fresh water? Who live in fresh water? Fennec Fox, Arctic Fox, or the bull shark? I think the bull shark, right? It's really easy. The ability to live in fresh water includes structural adaptation or behavioral adaptation. I think it's structural adaptation because the bull shark's body adapted. The bull shark's body adapted to live in this fresh or salty water. What about this card? Camouflage according to the season. Wow, who can do this? It is the Arctic Fox, you are right. The Arctic Fox do camouflage according to the season, and this is a kind of structural or behavioral adaptation. It changes its color of the fur. Fur color is structural adaptation because it's related to body part. Sharp teeth. Sharp teeth goes for the bull shark, right? In behavioral or structural adaptation, is it related to an action or a behavior? No, it's related to a body part. So, it's structural adaptation. And the last card is counter shading. This counter shading card will go for Fennec Fox, Arctic Fox, or bull shark. Yes, it goes for the bull shark. The bull shark can do this amazing counter shading, which is structural or behavioral. I'm really confused. I think counter shading helps it to camouflage, so it's structural adaptation. Now we were able to analyze and organize all the evidence of the adaptations for 3 organisms. And I'm sure many of you are excited to know more about interesting structural and behavioral adaptations in other animals. For me, I'm interested to know more about the lizards. In our last lesson, we talked about one species of them, which is the Agama lizard that lives in the desert, and we know of its behavioral adaptation. But is the Agama lizard the only lizard species? Are there any species that live in different environments and have different distinctive types of adaptation? That's what we will learn in activity 5, observe like a scientist. That's what we will learn in activity 5, observe like a scientist, on page 12. We are going to observe different species of lizards and their different ways of adaptation to be able to know more about structural adaptation and behavioral adaptation. Look closely at the image. This animal is called Panther Chameleon. It lives in tropical rainforests. I wonder what is the first thing that attracts your attention. Do you see its distinctive colors? Do you think that its colors help in its survival? Is this only way of adapting? Let's learn together more about the Panther Chameleon. Prepare your pens, paper, and write down all what you are going to read about its special adaptations. Not only do its distinctive colors help it hide among the trees, but it also has a very long tongue that can direct towards the prey and hunt it. Moreover, its tongue with its surface, which is as sticky as a bubble gum, allows the lizard to catch and hold on its prey easily. What are the other physical characteristics you wrote down? Exactly, the V-shaped feet. Can you see the V-shaped feet? What else? Certainly, its eyes. The chameleon can look in two different directions at the same time. One eye can be searching for something to eat, while the other look out for danger in a totally different direction. The word danger reminds me of one important thing. The panther chameleon puffs up its body with air. Then it opens its mouth wide. This display will probably scare the predators, but as you see, it's a very peaceful animal. There is one more feature that is located on page 13. Who has strong observation skills and can find this additional information? To help you read in an organized way, I'll tell you a strategy that may help you while reading. When you find evidence of structural adaptation of the panther chameleon, underline it and write the letter S on top of it. And if you find evidence of behavioral adaptation, underline and write the letter B. Let me show you an example. The first thing you might notice about a panther chameleon is its brightly colored scales. You are going to underline the phrase its brightly colored scales and write the letter S as evidence of structural adaptation. Are you ready to start? Let's start. Who found the missing piece? Exactly, the tail of the panther chameleon. Thank you. Panther chameleon uses its tail exactly like a hand. Let's now get back to classify the evidence in our table on page 13. You will record all adaptations of the panther chameleon that you underlined and at the same time write down how each adaptation type can help chameleon to survive. I'll give you a chance to fill the table, then we will review it together. The first adaptation is bright colors. How does this adaptation help the chameleon? Bright colors help the chameleon to do camouflage, to hunt and hide. What about eye face in opposite directions? The eyes move in opposite directions. Eyes face in opposite direction, it helps it to scare attackers, hunt or balance and move? Yes, it helps it to hunt easily. What about the V-shaped feet? V-shaped feet help it to balance and move like us. What about the puffed body? Puffed body help it to scare attackers. We still have one card, open mouth. Open mouth goes with puffed body because chameleon do it as a behavior when it's attacked to scare attackers. After filling the table, we are done with our lesson. Be ready to review the main points. Today we learned that there are two types of adaptations, the structural and behavioral adaptations. The structural adaptation is a physical feature or change to the animal's body, while the behavioral adaptation is a change in the way the animal behaves or acts. The difference evidences that we collected about structural adaptation, the color of the Arctic fox, big ears of the Fennec fox, and the counter shading of the bull shark. The evidence of behavioral adaptations are the panting of the Fennec fox and the panther chameleon buffing up its body with air. The most important skill that helped us today is the scientist behavior through the evaluate like a scientist activity and observe like a scientist activity. The evidence of the behavioral adaptations are the panting of the foxes and the panther chameleon puffing up its body with air. As you can see, most of adaptations help living organisms survive in their ecosystems. Whether the adaptation is structural or behavioral, I think it will help the living organism to survive in the ecosystem like the camouflage. The most important skill that helps us today is the scientist's behavior through analyze like a scientist activity and observe like a scientist activity. Do not forget to review the lesson and be ready for the next lesson in which we will act like botanists. Our key question will be, do the plants have structural and behavioral adaptations like animals? Think about it till we meet in our next lesson. Thank you.